And it will be posted on Metro's traffic calming website. That's where it'll be housed, and on Nashville's Channel 3 YouTube channel. So again, appreciate you joining us tonight. There's three main segments or things that we want to cover here at this meeting for these two streets. One is we'll give you a little bit of an overview of the program and how both of these streets got introduced into the traffic calming program. Secondly, we're going to show you a very preliminary plan that we have for each street in the traffic calming concept that we think is most appropriate, and want to get your reaction to that. And then the last thing before we go, we'll talk about next steps and what you can expect from us in the administration of this program or these projects. I'm going to refer to them maybe collectively as a project, or hopefully more accurately as two projects. These are two projects. This will become important maybe as we look at the plans and talk about how we implement those from a voting standpoint. They are two projects. We're just covering them here together tonight because you guys are neighbors. The projects touch each other. So it made sense to us to kind of talk about them all together. They kind of work in concert a little bit, but we can absolutely split them out, and we'll treat them as two distinct projects. A little bit about the traffic calming program in general. Most of us in Nashville are getting more and more familiar with it. We're seeing these speed cushions and things pop up more often on streets close to us. So you've probably encountered some aspects, at least, of the traffic calming program. But we really do focus on residential streets, as opposed to like Trousdale, that has more business activity and those types of things. Streets that where people are trying to live. You're trying to walk around the block. You're trying to check your mail, for crying out loud. Sometimes even traffic has impacts on that. We do encourage slower speeds, and again, that sounds obvious, but that is as opposed to someone who might engage the program hoping that we can move traffic off their street and move it somewhere else. That is not our intent, and the design of our projects is not meant to do that. It's just meant to lower the speeds that we have traveling on the street, and that's what we really focus on. And then the middle bullet there, physical solutions. We do have some educational tools. There might be some enforcement things that can happen outside of NDOT, but we have found we have the best success when we actually put something physical in the roadway, something in the right of way that changes drivers' behavior. I'm going to stop there. I see Council Member Johnston has joined us. Just wanted to say hello, and if she has anything she'd like to address, feel free, Councilwoman.
You're good. I'm not going to hold anybody up.
All right. We'll keep moving. As I did mention that sometimes those physical tools in the right of way are not the complete solution to a traffic calming project, although for what we do and what we're going to talk about here tonight, that is pretty much the extent of it. But we are aware that there are other components that can be very helpful. Education, making sure people understand the impacts of speeds and what the speed limit is and how fast maybe they're going. We do have some tools in that regard. Enforcement is a big one, and sometimes people will say, how come we can't just get Metro PD out here to write a few tickets? And that would be wonderful, but we don't control that activity, and as we all understand that our police are out there doing a incredibly difficult job, and sometimes the resources that they have for traffic enforcement just are not very robust. So the thing that we do control with the DOT is the right of way. And so we really focus on those engineered solutions to kind of self-police or self-restrict speeds on our streets. One of the things that we do like to talk about is the reasoning behind traffic calming in particular. We know these streets have a lot of activity where people are trying to use the street for different purposes. People are walking, people are bicycling, people are driving, not in this neighborhood as much, but in some cases taking transit. And so there's all these mixes of streets going on, and we know that when that happens, and you've got very, very vulnerable users to the street, the chances of survival go way up in the unfortunate event of a pedestrian crash, in particular here, go way up when speeds are slowed down. So that was part of the rationale behind the big county-wide push to a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that we saw a few years ago. So now we're working towards trying to achieve that. We're just trying to achieve slower speeds on our streets. This continues to be a very in-demand program. As of the last application window that we still had over 500 streets. We used to report over 450. It's growing a little bit each time. It seems like, where neighbors across Davidson County have a lot of the same issues. So you're not alone in this. But you did reach a threshold by which two projects here very close to one another were selected into the program. And that's kind of a competitive thing. I'll show you our prioritization and how we pick those. And so that just means your streets were some of the worst in terms of the speeding and the scoring that we saw. I will say council has been very supportive of the program and the funding that it's gotten. So the reason, probably part of the reason, two streets are in here from Creve Hall is that NDOT did its largest announcement of speed calming ever last summer. We inducted 85 new streets into the program. Typically, we only do 50 a year, and so last year we did 85 just in one of those windows. So just kind of a big one-time push to try and clear some of this backlog from some of these demands for traffic calming. We always like to plug Hub Nashville. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great resource for residents of the county. Hub.Nashville.gov. You can also always just pick up the phone and call 311. And it is a clearinghouse for all types of service requests. The reason we mention it here is sometimes people will come to these meetings asking for things like speed limits or sidewalks, and we know how important and what a great resource those types of things can be. We just don't do those in this program. And so Hub Nashville is a great way to lodge that request and keep a record of that. And that's not just for NDOT as well. Most metro departments have some sort of requesting apparatus there. A little bit about the prioritization that we use when we're trying to select from among 500 different streets that have been requested. You see it here in the pie chart. 70% of the score that we use comes from actual data that we collect on the street. Most of that is, as you would imagine, speeding data, where we put tubes across the road and we measure how fast traffic is going. Another 25% of that is the number of cars on the street. We find that important. Just because there's a low number, though, doesn't rule you out. We really use that volume for another purpose, and that is we don't do traditional types of traffic calming on higher volume streets, and so that gives us an idea of whether it would be an appropriate street for traffic calming or not. The other 30% that we use has to do with some of those other types of users I was talking about earlier. So if your street has sidewalks, for instance, your score actually goes down, because the philosophy there is, well, people have a reasonably safe accommodation to walk on the street. Whereas like on these two streets, there are no sidewalks. So you would have benefited from that scoring system. Another aspect to that are the potential for destinations, things like Creve Hall Elementary School, Overton High School, the Haley Ballpark, CSX Park down there, all of those facilities or destinations like that potentially make for good walking trips. So when you've got those in the neighborhood, that boosts your score as well. And then lastly, the presence of was there a pedestrian crash that has occurred on record that we know about, that boosts the score as well. So that's we roll, we collect all that data, roll all of that into a big composite score, rank those, and move forward with the projects that are the top of that list. So I'll share with you a little bit of that data from specific to these streets. The first one is Farrell Parkway. And this project is going to go from Lambert Drive to Stillwood. That's the entire length of Farrell. The 85th percentile speed is just kind of the statistical way we look at that, was 37 miles an hour. That's about average for the streets that we select. You got a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed, so you can see that's quite a bit higher than the posted speed, and it's got about 2,500 vehicles a day. Again, that's probably average. Some people are surprised how much traffic are on these streets, but that's about average for the streets that we work on. The street width becomes important as we start thinking about the layout of the traffic calming project. I've got here 20 feet. You all know that it's much wider than that. That's 20 feet each side. You know, this is a unique street that has that grass median separating it. So there aren't many like that in Metro that are residential streets. So this is kind of a unique one, and may be the result, or maybe, you know, leading to some of the speeding issues that we're seeing on there. I don't know. But 20 feet wide each side, and then it's about 4/10 of a mile long from one end to the other. The other project, Stillwood Drive, this one goes from Bramblewood down to Hogan. Hogan is pretty apparent. That's the dead end. We'll look at a map here. You probably understand why we stop at Bramblewood there and why that makes a good terminus for the project. But the 85th percentile speed there measured just a little bit faster actually than Farrell Parkway, but much lower volume, only about 700 cars a day. It is 20 feet wide as well, but doesn't feel nearly as wide. You know, that's the entire width of the road. There are no curbs or anything on there, but that works great for a traffic calming project. We'll have no issues with that. And it's a little longer as well, at about 6/10 of a mile. Here are those two streets. They're kind of in the middle of the page. I'm not sure if you guys can see my cursor moving around or not, but anyway, Farrell Parkway. Okay, Farrell Parkway runs east-west toward the top of the picture there. It's a green line, and then that dead ends into Stillwood, which runs north-south about the middle of the page, also a green line. This is a snapshot from an interactive map that is on Metro's traffic calming website. And we like to show it not only just to show the limits of the project, but it gives some other information that you might be interested in. Green lines mean that these projects have been selected. They're in the program, but they're not complete. We're just in progress. And so you see another one, that's Berrywood, is another project very close to you that's going to be kind of tracking along with these as well. You see that one here also in green. The purple lines that you see mean that there's an application that the city has on that, but it has not been selected. So it has not been prioritized yet, but we do know about it. And that might be helpful if you're ever wondering, you know, this might be a good street for this program. I wonder if there's been an application put in on it. You can check it and see here, and then you don't have to if there's already been applied for. And then the blue lines are streets that have had some form of traffic calming applied to them. Solid lines usually mean it's more of that educational type thing. You guys are familiar with some of the feedback signs that went up recently on Hogan Road and Trousdale. That's why those lines are blue. If you pan around, I'm not sure we can see any on this slide, but if you were to pan around a little bit on this map online, you would see some dashed blue lines. And that means that there's typically been speed cushions or speed humps or something raised put in the road. And that gives you the ability, if you're curious, never driven on those, never encountered them, you can go over there, drive on that street and try those out. So we make that information available to you. All right, so talk a little bit about some of the tools that we have in our toolkit. This is just kind of a definition leading up to when I show you the plan, so you'll kind of be informed as to what we're talking about, the types of devices that we use. This first one is speed cushions. It's the bread and butter of our program. So a lot of people, when they want to engage this program, this is what, you know, they know about traffic calming and what they're interested in. And that's for good reason. I mean, these show up on probably 95+% of our projects. This is really the bread and butter, and this is what we have planned for your project as well. These are manufactured recycled rubber, very dense rubber speed cushions that we order. We like that for a couple reasons. One is they're effective. Secondly, we know what we're getting. There's no guesswork. Y'all will be familiar with the old speed humps that were built actually in place on the Overton Road many years ago. Those are probably some of the oldest traffic calming things in the county, I would guess. And we don't do that anymore. Those were site built. They've held up. They've worked. But we don't. We prefer now to purchase these and install these. We keep them. Can keep them in stock for replacements and so forth. But anyway, it's a known commodity. They're about 3 inches tall, and they're 6 feet wide. So as you drive over them, as you look in this upper left-hand picture, that where that little arrow is, that dimension is 6 feet wide. It's wide enough that you can't straddle it, but it's certainly it's made obviously in these, they call them cushions. They're these individual little pads, and we space them like this so that a larger wheelbase vehicle can have lesser impact with those. And by that, we're talking about ambulances, fire trucks, things that have an important job to do and need to get where they're going. Those types of vehicles aren't as impacted by these. But everybody else is going to at least put 2 wheels on them, and that's enough for them to be effective. They slow traffic down in the depending on what type we use, in the anywhere from 15 to 25 mile an hour range. We do have some selection or some ability to customize these. The height's always the same, the width's always the same, but we can vary the length. And so they come in 7-foot lengths, 10.5 and 14. The shorter the length, so the 7-footers, the more aggressive traffic calming we have. That's going to slow you down even more. And so we typically reserve those for our most urban neighborhoods, that have a lot of parking on. They're just very constrained streets, low setbacks for houses, and a lot of parked cars and those kinds of things. We might use a 7-foot cushion. Our default is 10.5. That's where we use most places. And then you get out into some of our rural areas of the county, we might use a 14-foot cushion. So that is some of the design that goes into this. You also see some examples of the signage that we use in the upper left-hand picture there. That's a pretty standard sign assembly that we use at a lot of our locations. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you see a couple of little flexible posts, those plastic posts out to the side. We don't use those as a rule. We show that because sometimes there's a condition where there might be a flat shoulder, or even a yard that's flat off the side of the road. Our experience is that if the worst offenders can drive around these things, they will drive around them. If that means leaving the road, they will try to drive around them. So we have to take steps to kind of protect the edges and make sure that someone can't drive around these things. So just some more of the design considerations that go into it. Obviously, you see sets of 2 cushions, sets of 3 cushions. We can go wider. Typically don't have to. I think on both of these streets, at around that 20-foot width, we'd be looking for 2 cushions side by side. On Farrell, that would be 2 cushions on each of those lanes. You know what I mean? 2 on one side, 2 on the other side would be enough to make it so that someone can't drive around them. Speed tables is a very close cousin to the speed cushion. It's just one solid piece all the way across. We don't use these very often because we really like that emergency vehicle aspect of the cushions. We've worked with police, we've worked with EMS. They're comfortable with what we use. And so in some very special circumstances, we might use speed tables, but generally not. Otherwise, they work about the same way. We do have a little bit of before and after data on these. I think most people that drive them understand how they work and why they're effective. But what we are finding is on average, they lower speeds, somewhere between 9, 12 miles an hour. It really depends on how fast traffic was before, and also about how our design, how they lay out, the condition of the road and that kind of thing. But we do find them to be pretty effective. Another tool that we have that, as I mentioned earlier, you guys are already familiar with is radar feedback signs. I think the jury's still out a little bit more on the effectiveness of these. I think they're very effective in the short term at least. And then some people that have them in their neighborhood swear by them and say, no, I think it stays effective. I've noticed a difference. Other people say, no, it kind of goes away once you get used to them. So but they can be a good tool, especially for people who might not be as familiar with the neighborhood, who don't drive by it every day, and may just not be aware of how fast they're going. Sometimes it does catch you off guard, but these are solar powered. We'll use these on these types of projects. We mostly use these where we can't put a speed cushion. So there are some limitations like steep hills, or if we have a lot of curves where you don't have good sight distance to the speed cushions, or you just got one driveway after the next, it's hard to fit them in. We might use a feedback sign to kind of supplement the work there. Another tool that we will use sometimes is trying to visually narrow the road using pavement markings. A lot of streets don't have any markings at all. I don't know if either one of these do or not. I don't recall, but sometimes just having one big expanse of pavement might be kind of encouraging higher speeds. And so sometimes if we can narrow that with especially edge lines, that can be a beneficial thing to do. These pictures show adding center lines as well. While we can do that, we do that very carefully because I think there's some differences of opinion on whether that center line seems to narrow the road or makes it feel like a more major road, like you should be going faster. It kind of can send that message as well. So anyway, just another tool that we have to work with. In more of our urban areas, we do some things around corners, intersections. Not always urban. Sometimes they're just really large intersections. I know that intersection of Farrell and Stillwood is a big intersection. There's a lot of pavement there, just the way that was constructed. Sometimes we find the need to narrow that, and we do that typically with paint. But that also has to be paired with these again plastic bollards or delineators to force traffic to kind of pull up to the stop bar and hopefully stop and then proceed out and make their turn a little bit lower speed as opposed to kind of whipping in quickly. And then chicanes or something. We've got them on one or two streets in Metro. It's not very common at all where we kind of zigzag the road back and forth. It's often done in concert with some parking. So it doesn't fit for a lot of neighborhoods, but it's a tool we have. And then one that we just don't use very often at all, largely because of impacts to really big vehicles like school buses and things like that who have a hard time kind of navigating these. So Metro does not use these very often, but traffic circles can help be a good traffic calming device in the middle of intersections on occasion. So with that, let's look at the plans, the concepts that we have. So we're going to start with Farrell Parkway. On the left of the picture is, you see the little stop sign there. That's the stop on Farrell at Lambert Drive. So to the north would be Overton High School. And so you, as you leave that and come under the two bridges there, that begins our project. And then we go all the way, you see where the road splits there at Travelers Rest, and you got kind of a divided roadway at that point, and it goes all the way down to the right-hand side of your screen at Stillwood Drive. Again, that's about 4/10 of a mile. That gives us enough space to do about 4 sets of cushions we believe would give the best result. The way we lay these in is we'll take that length of that road, and as we know here it's a little over 2,100 feet, and then we're looking for a spacing somewhere between usually about 400 to 500 feet. Sometimes a little over 600 feet or something like that. In that range, you get much shorter than that, and it starts to just feel kind of obnoxious, and it may start pushing traffic somewhere else that we don't want it to go. You get much over that, 600, 700 feet, and it gets to become less effective. There's space too far apart, and people will go slowly over the speed cushions, but then they'll speed up to get to the next set. We know if we can keep them in that 400, 500, 600 foot range, we'll get a nice, consistent, slow speed throughout the street. It just doesn't make sense for most drivers then to speed up, just to get to the next set. They're hitting them regularly And so the length on this street, the other things we look at, like I mentioned, hills, curves we have to just steer clear of. And then driveways. We're cognizant that nobody wants to pull up, come in and out of their driveway and have to cross over speed cushions that are just immediately adjacent to it. So we're always going to put them at least 15 feet apart. And in most cases, we can keep them a lot farther than that. This is a good example where you got plenty of room here. You got large lots and large frontage, so the driveway shouldn't be an issue for us. As well as it's obviously straight as you can see, and there aren't any significant hills on the road either. So we don't have many things to design around here. So four sets of cushions, generally 2 by 2 on each of those legs, we think is going to give us a good result. But again, happy to hear any feedback, or if there's particular things that we might not know about your street and how it operates, we're happy to hear those as well. I'll pause here if anybody wants to come on mute and react to what you see, or let us know anything. All right. We'll go to the next street. We'll let you think about them all together here. This is Stillwood, and so to the left of your picture there is Hogan Road down at the bottom of the hill where the street dead ends, and then coming up to the right hand side, it goes to Bramblewood. We've got that labeled there, and I know if I'm driving through this area, I mean, I can certainly understand that Bramblewood is kind of a cut off back to Trousdale then for people going to the interstate or wherever they're going past there. So we do not set these limits by and large. Those come in as part of the application. We always look at them, and if something just doesn't make sense or we think it'd be a better project, we'll modify those. But this time, I think the application got it pretty well. I think that makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, if you continue going straight on Bramblewood, it just loops back around. So it's kind of a dead end up there. There's really no reason for traffic to go much of anywhere up there. In this case, we've got 5 cushions. We do have a hill as you come down from about Creve Road down to Hogan Road. I would have liked to space them a little bit differently in that area. I still think we'll get a really good result there, but we do have to be mindful of that hill. I did go ahead and put one right at the bottom of the hill. We'll move that just as far away from that stop sign as we can, but it will be fairly close, maybe 200 feet or so to the stop sign. And so that was the only real design consideration that I saw, but otherwise works about the same. We would be shooting for 5 sets of speed cushions here because it's a little bit longer street. That'll put us just over a little over 500 feet on average. So again, we think it'll give us a good result. Any comments or questions on either one of those concepts that you're seeing?
This is Randall Morgan. I live on the corner of Stillwood and Creve, and so the only thing that I love all this is great, but the only thing that I think about that not having one at the lower side of that intersection, which is directly in front of my house, versus all the way to the end of the street, is we get off. I'm sorry, let me just turn that off. You might know what happened when I start talking. So. Is that speed hump? The people that come off of Trousdale drive west on Creve Road just to avoid the school zone or whatever in the afternoons. They just fly around that corner and then straight in. I'm wondering if that speed bump to be moved either. I can point at it, but you not understand what I'm pointing at.
I know exactly what you're saying,
okay.
Mr. Morgan. I know that movement, that 4-way stop backs up, and so people find their way around that and come up your street and then turn left here on. Right. But, I know that when you stop at that stop sign, looking back to the right, that's a fairly limited sight distance. I know I'm careful when I do that turn. There would be a speed cushion there that would slow traffic down coming at that intersection, but I totally get what you're saying, because if you're not as careful as that and you make that left turn, that's the complaint that you have. I would love to move something up, like I said. I know that kind of begins the downhill there.
Sure.
We can
Yeah.
put speed cushions up to about 8%. We don't like to go any more than 6%. So what we'll have to do is just be out there with our level and check that and just make sure. And same thing down at the bottom of the hill. If we can't get it right on the other side of the intersection, like you're saying, we will cheat this one back up just as near to it as we can. And I hope that at least would give somebody pause about just turning around that just as quickly as possible, just knowing that they're going to hit a speed cushion anyway when they get down the hill. So hopefully it would have some impact, but we'll do the best we can.
Well, and as you know, people, you run a stop sign long enough, the stop sign just ceased to exist, and that's what we're seeing. That they have run the Creve Road stop sign. I mean, the Creve and Stillwood stop sign so long that now it's not there. So people fly up and they'll run it, and then someone will be coming over the hill. And I've actually seen them go side by side about 2 or 3 houses down the street, at 50 miles an hour because they couldn't determine who should have stopped, right?
Oh, wow.
In their minds, maybe it was a 4-way stop or there was no stop sign to begin with in their mind. So that's why I think, but yeah, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Anybody else? All right, good question. Well, if you think of some, I'm going to give you our contact information here in just a minute, and feel free to follow back up with us if you have any questions or want to give us any comments on that. A little bit about where we're going from here. So we are in the neighborhood meeting phase, this red circle at the top of the slide. I know this looks a little complicated, but it's not too bad. It's just kind of an overview of our process and the steps that you can expect from us. So you already made the application. You were selected. That's the first 2 blue circles. Coming to neighborhood meeting is where we are tonight. What we will do is we will move using those 2 concepts. We will move those into design at this point. And what we've been doing, because we have a lot of new projects and just a lot of projects in general, kind of in a backlog, we've been working to streamline this whole process. So in the past, we would have done another meeting like this after we get our design done, but we were finding that, if what I just showed you seemed to be pretty well met people's expectations for what we were going to do, then we can come back in a couple of months and talk about it again, but it won't be really any further along. And so what we're trying to do with a lot of these projects is just give you the opportunity. If you want to go straight into the design, it'll look like what I just showed, and then move directly into the ballot. From there, we can do that and cut some time off the process. If anybody has any reservations to that, we absolutely do not mind getting back together for a second meeting and let you see that. We just found a lot of times that people would just sooner get on with it and go ahead and start the voting on it. So that ball's kind of in y'all's court, but we would start that design process after this meeting. If we don't do a second meeting, we go straight into the online ballot process, and I'll give you a little information about that. And then if that passes, then we go into the construction phase from there. We give you some time frames for all of this stuff. We'd like to have about 2 months to do all of the field work and the design work, and then get into the online ballot. We put 2 months there, but it's a known process. It's a 6-week process, and then once that closes, then it becomes kind of a waiting game for the materials to be ordered and to get on the contractor's schedule. And Councilwoman Johnston can tell you all about that. It is some time after that online ballot. So we say all that. We don't want you to think we're going to be out here in February installing anything. We've got some time to go here, but just wanted you to kind of understand the process there. A little bit about that ballot process. That's often a question people are interested in. So because this is a neighborhood-driven project, you guys apply for it, and then we kind of walk through this design, and we also give people an opportunity to express their support or opposition for it at the end. And the way that's done is we will poll everyone who lives directly on one of these 2 streets. I'll show you a snapshot of that on the next slide. But if you are an eligible voter for these projects, we're going to send you a card. Hopefully most of you got a card for this meeting if you live on the street. And it's a ballot card, so it's a little bit different. It's got a code up here. You can also key in the website. You can also call the phone number that's on the card. And if you go to the website, you'll go to a Nashville.gov page. You'll put in a little information. There's a code down here that will be printed on your card. You key that in, and then you just vote yes or no. And we hold that open for 6 weeks. And at the end of that period, if 2/3 of the people have voted yes for the project, we will go ahead and move it forward. There's no set number that have to vote. It's just like a real election. We just look at the body of the people that voted and judge from there. That is the eligible people are, as I mentioned, this is a snapshot. It's obviously not the whole project, but just to give you an idea. So this would be Farrell Parkway. Actually, this is the whole project of Farrell Parkway. These would be the people that would vote. So you see the street kind of running right through the middle, and all of those yellow properties live immediately on Farrell Parkway. Their property shares a property line with the right-of-way of the street. You'll notice I didn't get things like the park, whoever owns that, the little field there with up the hill from the ballpark. Then you got TDOT's got a lot of that right-of-way. We wouldn't poll things like Travelers Rest. There's also a vacant lot right there. We don't poll vacant lots. Sometimes, and Farrell looks like it has this, you've got more than one unit on one parcel, one piece of property. So we would poll both of those people. Now it's important to note when we say poll them and send cards to them, it is the owner of the property. So if any of these are renters, they won't necessarily get the card at their house. We're going to be sending it to the owner of the property wherever that is. If an owner owns more than one piece of property on the street, they only get one vote. You can't have more than one. And then I don't think either of these streets have any businesses on them, but those are ineligible. Any questions about voting, who gets to vote, or how that works? All right. Any questions at all? This is us. If you can ask them now, or you can feel free to email us later. These are two good contacts for the program. I'm Jeff. I'm the one in green below, Jeff Hammond at birchtransportation.com. Also, feel free to email or copy or neither, or whatever you want to do. The NDOT general address, we make that a generic address just because there's more than one person at Metro that works in the program. So this way they all get that. NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov. Send it to one or both of us. We'll be glad to hear from you and respond to you. That's it. That's a QR code in the website to the Metro Traffic Calming webpage I've referenced several times in talking. So feel free to check that out. It's got a lot of great resources there if you ever really just dying to learn more about the traffic calming program. It's a really great resource. Any final thoughts or comments before we sign off?
And if anybody has any questions for me as well, I'm happy to answer whatever. I mean, Jeff's done an exceptional job. He's only done it once or twice.
Yeah.
You can probably do it in your sleep now.
Hey, this is one of two tonight. I've got two meetings just tonight.
Yeah, but I'm happy to answer any questions as well, guys and gals.
Y'all are easy. They're ready. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Councilwoman Johnston, and thank all of you for taking your time this evening here to learn about the program and support safer streets in Nashville. However you vote is up to you, but we appreciate you driving safely, being safe, and making Nashville a better place to drive around and to walk around and transport yourself. So thanks for taking the time to be here. With that, I'll wish you a good night. Thank you all.